Have you ever felt like your brain is just a leaky bucket for important stuff? You know, a name, a number, that brilliant idea you had in the shower? Poof, it's just gone. Well, today we're going to patch those holes. Because here's the secret. A powerful memory isn't something you're born with, it's a skill you can build. So think of this as your personal user's guide to training your brain.
Oh, we have all been there, right? That frantic, last-minute search for your keys when you're already late. Or that super awkward moment when you totally blank on a name just seconds after an introduction. These little memory fails, they're incredibly common, but they absolutely do not have to be your reality.
And this is probably the most important thing you'll hear today. What you think of as a bad memory is almost always just an untrained one. Seriously, your memory is like a muscle. I mean, there are people out there, they're called competitive memorizers, who can recall the order of dozens of shuffled decks of cards. They weren't born with some kind of superpower, they just learned how to train that muscle. And so can you. Okay, so let's think about your brain like it's a supercomputer. Before we can install any of the cool new memory software, we have to make sure the hardware itself is running in peak condition. These are the absolute non-negotiable foundations for a better memory. According to the Mayo Clinic, it really boils down to 4 essential pillars for brain health. Daily physical activity gets the blood flowing, bringing all that good oxygen and nutrients upstairs. Quality sleep, that's when your brain actually consolidates memories, filing away the day's info. A healthy diet provides the literal building blocks for your brain cells. And just hanging out with people, that social interaction helps keep stress, a total memory killer, at bay. If you can nail these fundamentals, you're setting the stage for huge success. And look, you don't need to be some marathon runner to get the benefits. The Department of Health and Human Services recommends just 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity a week. That's it. That's basically a brisk walk for about 20 minutes a day. That's all it takes to help keep your memory sharp. All right, hardware is optimized. Now it's time to install the software. These are the active, really powerful techniques you can use to consciously encode information, turning those fleeting thoughts into durable, long-lasting memories. So the most fundamental principle of all of this is association. Our brains are actually terrible at remembering random, isolated facts. Information just needs a hook to hang on to. So, for example, if you meet a new colleague and his name is Baker, you could instantly picture him wearing a big chef's hat, baking bread. By linking that new name to a concept you already know, you've created a really strong mental pathway to find it later. And when it comes to association, trust me, the crazier the connection, the better. Your brain is hardwired to remember things that are new, absurd, or super visual. So don't just connect Walter White to Walt Disney, picture them in a ridiculous, heated argument over chemistry. Don't just see your client Sandy on a beach, imagine her building a gigantic, totally elaborate sandcastle. It's these unforgettable images that are the real key. Now for one of the most powerful memory techniques ever devised, the memory palace. This ancient method, sometimes called the method of loci, taps into our brain's incredible spatial memory. You're essentially turning a place you know really well, like your own home, into a mental filing cabinet for literally anything you want to remember. And building one is actually pretty simple. First, just pick a place you know, like the back of your hand. Your house is perfect. Second, plot a specific path through it in your mind. Say from the front door, to the entryway table, to the kitchen counter. Finally, at each one of those spots, you place a wild, vivid image of what you need to remember. So for a grocery list, you might picture milk exploding all over your front doormat, or a giant talking loaf of bread blocking the hallway. To recall your list, you just walk the path in your mind's eye. Want to give your memory palace a pro-level upgrade? Don't just use locations, use people. See, our brains are wired to remember faces and interactions. So instead of just placing an image of an apple on your kitchen table, imagine your best friend standing there juggling a dozen bright red apples. That social element makes the memory even stickier. Another fantastic strategy is something called chunking. Our short-term memory can really only handle about 7 pieces of information at once. But if you group those individual items into meaningful chunks, you can dramatically increase that capacity. It's exactly why a phone number is chunked into 3 parts. It's way easier to remember 3 chunks than 10 separate digits. And of course, there are mnemonics. Think of them like memory cheat codes. They can be acronyms to remember the order of operations in math, simple rhymes that make historical dates totally unforgettable, or creative images that link a place to its name. These simple little tricks are surprisingly powerful for quick recall. So encoding all this information is the first huge step, but that's really only half the battle. how do you make sure what you've learned actually stays there for the long haul? This next part is all about moving knowledge from your temporary working memory into permanent long-term storage.
Okay, this one is a game changer. Stop just rereading your notes. That kind of passive review creates this dangerous illusion that you know the material. Instead, you need to practice active recall. This just means forcing your brain to retrieve the information without looking, like using flashcards or just quizzing yourself. That very act of retrieval is what strengthens the neural pathways, making the memory stronger and easier to access next time.
I mean, think about how most of us studied in school versus how we should have. Cramming feels really productive in the moment, right? But the information just vanishes almost as soon as the test is over. The scientifically proven alternative is spaced repetition, reviewing stuff over increasing intervals of time. It might feel a little slower, but it's the difference between temporary access and true, durable mastery. Now, here's a slightly counterintuitive tip that works wonders. It's called interleaving. Instead of blocking out 3 hours to study just one topic, try studying 3 different topics for an hour each. I know, it feels harder because you're forcing your brain to switch gears and retrieve different sets of information, but that extra effort is precisely what leads to more flexible, long-term learning. So we've covered the hardware fundamentals, the software for encoding, and the methods for making it all stick. Now comes the most important part, actually putting it to work. These aren't passive tips you can just absorb. They are active skills that require a real workout. Memory expert Anthony Medevere says it perfectly. Just knowing about the memory palace does absolutely nothing for you. You have to actually build one. Understanding active recall is great, but you have to actually test yourself. True, lasting improvement only comes from consistent, applied effort. The key is just to start small. Don't try to build a palace for an entire textbook on day one. Just pick one thing. Use an association to remember a new colleague's name at your next meeting. Use a mini memory palace for your grocery list this week. The journey to a truly powerful memory starts not with some giant leap, but with a single deliberate step. So what's your first step going to be?